Hi everyone, Mike here from Heroes and Bosses with part 3 of the Sigmarite Mausoleum, or as it's called now, the Corpsewrack Mausoleum from Warcry. Unlike the Warcry version, I don't have snow on mine, but that is an easy final step you can do once you've painted everything. The first thing I'm going to do here is cover the ground with actual earth texture, and it doesn't matter which one since we're going to be priming it right after. Next I've assembled everything, but I haven't attached the building to the base or the lid to the sarcophagus yet. I'm going to paint these separately, but I'm priming all three with Mechanicus Standard Grey. The first part I'm going to paint is the base, and I'm going to be using two different colors to create some variety in the stones on the ground. The first one I'm using is Dawnstone. Next I'm using Skavenblight Dinge with a small amount of black at it to make it a bit darker. The specific greys don't really matter. You can add white or black or even blue or brown to any grey you have to create some interesting stone colors. Next I'm painting all of the earth texture with Dryad bark. I'm also going to use the Dryad bark on all of these skulls. For the two sarcophagi, I created a 1-to-1 mix of Stegadon Scale Green and Mechanicus Standard Grey. Now you could of course speed this process up a lot by not using different stone colors and just skipping right to putting on washes, but I like having some variety in the color, so I'm going to do this the long way. With the ground and the stones finished, I'm moving on to the bones and the skeleton. First I'm covering all the bones and the skulls on the ground, as well as the ones in the sarcophagus with Karak stone. For the sword, breastplate, and helmet, I'm using gunmetal from Army Painter. And the final base color is going to be Balthasar Gold, which is my go-to bronze color. This is going to be used on the shield, the crossguard and pommel of the sword, as well as the raised emblem on the lid of the sarcophagus. Now that all the base colors are on, I'm switching to washes to add some shadow and weathering effects. The first wash I'm using is a 1-to-1 mix of Agrax Earthshade and Nuln oil. This is going on everything except the bronze, and even if you get it on the bronze, that's fine. It won't look out of place. One of the great things about painting terrain that's supposed to look old and dirty is that you don't have to worry too much about missing pools of wash, but I am trying to avoid large pools on any flat, smooth surfaces. If I do see one, I'm using a damp brush to soak it up or to feather it out. For all the bronze areas, I'm using Drakenhof Nightshade. You could of course use the same wash as you did with the rest of the base, but a blue wash on top of bronze creates a nice black corroded look. Next I'm doing some dry brush highlights. In fact, all of the highlights on this terrain are going to be dry brushed on. I'm starting with the stone by using Celestra Grey. I've wiped most of the paint off my brush onto a piece of paper towel, and now I'm just lightly brushing the edges of all the stonework to try to brighten it up. Now I'm switching to Earth from Vallejo. This is a reddish brown similar to XV88, which you could use instead. I'm using this on all of the earth texture. I'm switching to a smaller flat brush now to do the bones and the skulls. These are just getting a dry brush reapplication of the Karak stone. Next I'm adding some corrosion effects. For the steel metallics I'm adding a layer of Typhus corrosion. I'm first coating the silver areas and then using a damp brush to pull away from anything that gets too much of it. For the bronze areas I'm doing the exact same thing, but I'm using Nihilakh Oxide instead. As an optional step, you can add some rusty orange on top of the Typhus corrosion. I used some watered down orange rust from Secret Weapon. These pieces are now ready to be assembled with super glue. You just need to pick an arrangement for the lid of your sarcophagus. I'm going to start off the building with a weathered look using two different shades of grey. The first one is Celestra Grey, and I'm applying this with a large round tip brush. I've wiped most of the paint off my brush just like you would with a dry brush, and I'm stippling the paint all over the flat surfaces. I'm not going too crazy with this, I still want to be able to see the original grey underneath. Once I have some nice speckles everywhere, I'm switching to a darker grey and doing the exact same thing. This one is Eshin Grey. But I am going to apply fewer specks this time as I don't want to completely cover the other two colors. Now I'm going to paint all the features that I want to appear bronze, once again using Balthasar gold. The parts you pick out to be bronze or stone are really up to your imagination, so I'm just picking things that I think will look cool. For me, anything that looks like a plaque or an emblem is getting bronze, and also any of the skulls that weren't human-sized. Next I'm painting the roof, but I don't want it to be super shiny looking. I'm going to take a bit of Dryad bark and mix it into the bronze. This mix is about 2 parts Balthasar gold and 1 part Dryad bark. For the gates and the spire on top of the building, I'm using gunmetal from Army Painter. I'm also using it on these skulls near the top, along with the 2 metal beams extending from them. Next I'm going to paint the lid of the sarcophagus. Once again I'm mixing up an equal amount of Stegadon scale green with some Mechanicus standard grey. I'm also going to use this color on the square stones above 2 of the gates. And the final base color for the building is Karak stone for all the skulls on the sides of the doors. That's all the base colors on, so now it's time to make this building look old. This time I'm using just Nuln oil on all of the stone, but I'm first watering it down. If it's too heavy, it's going to hide all the weathering effects we added with the stippling. With the flat walls, I'm just trying to get a smooth, even layer to help blend in all the stippling. And again, like last time, I'm using Drakenhof Nightshade on all of the bronze. Now that the washes are done, it's time for a few finishing touches. The first is a very light dry brush of all the stonework on the building using more of the Celestra Grey. Now it's time for some more corrosion using Typhus corrosion. I'm adding a thin layer of Typhus to all the silver colored areas. Once that's dry, I'm switching to some watered down orange rust from Secret Weapon. There's no rhyme or reason to where I'm putting this, I'm just dabbing it in random places, but I'm not completely covering the gates. I want it to look like the gate is in various stages of decay. Then, as you see here, I'm giving the bone-colored skulls a quick dry brush with more Karak stone. Next, I'm switching back to Nihilakh Oxide and I'm putting a thin layer over everything that's bronze. Now, something I noticed about this stuff is that it works great on small or detailed objects, but not so great on flat surfaces. After I covered the roof, the entire roof turned gray, almost the same color as the walls. Now, I will show you how I fix this later in the video, but you can decide at this stage if you want to just add the oxide to the grooves and the bolts in the roof, or if you want to do it the way I did it. It did turn out looking nice, but purely by accident. Here are the last two colors I'll be using before I fix the roof. The first is Athonian Camoshade. This is going to be my mold and algae color. I'm putting this all around the bottom of the stone walls and also in any place where water might collect after a rain and start turning things green. And the German Grey is just being used to paint the rim of the base. So, back to the roof. In the end, I decided to create a thin glaze with the Balthasar Gold and then brush this on top of the oxide. I'm also avoiding letting too much of this get into the grooves or around the bolts. I want that oxide color to show through. I don't have a lot on my brush, and I'm just covering the roof enough so that you can still see a bit of the green underneath. Next I want to add a bit of dead grass, but before I do that I'm going to spray the entire structure with a layer of matte varnish to seal everything in. This grass is wasteland tufts from Army Painter, and I'm attaching them with a small amount of superglue. I also like to cut up the bigger tufts, since I find a big round patch doesn't always look natural. And there you have it, another piece of the Sigmarite, aka Corpsewrack Mausoleum complete. Thank you very much to all my patrons for your continued support, and a special thanks to Brian Jones for sponsoring the channel. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comments section below, and thanks for watching.